Hi, I'm Jeff Cook with the University of Georgia Cooperative Extension, and this is Backyard Basics. This winter and spring, the weather has been extremely tough on a lot of our plants, whether it's in the garden, the home landscape, or even on the farm. So I thought about, what better topic to talk about than the weather and how it's affecting our plants, plants that you're seeing in your yard, your garden, things that are happening out on the farm. I thought, hey, what better place to start right here in Reynolds, Georgia at the strawberry patch. I know a lot of you folks have been driving up and down 96. You stop in, and you're asking about, when are the strawberries going to be ready? When are they going to be ready? So we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to start off here, talk a little bit about why, you may not be seeing a bunch of red berries right now, getting towards the 1st of May. And then we're going to go to we're going to look at some lawns, probably some trees, and also at a garden patch and kind of talk about what's going on and what we can expect this year, mainly due to the cold weather we had this winter. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about strawberry production in Georgia and really the Southeast and anywhere where they commercially produce strawberries. We used to do a lot of stuff with matted row, which is you'd plant a plant like this, you would let it grow a daughter plant or a runner, and you'd get that runner root, then you'd have that plant produce strawberries and continuously produce strawberries, in a perennial type system. Now what we do is what we call the annual hill system. They'll come out here with a machine in the fall. They'll bed these rows up, poke holes in the plastic, and plant their plants, say October, November. The reason we use this black plastic is this is a cold season crop. We're planting it in the late summer, early fall to let it grow through the winter. We want that black plastic to actually absorb heat from the sun, keep these plants, growing, doing what they're supposed to do. Now with a strawberry plant, when you put it in the ground in October, the reason we do that is for it to produce flower buds, initiate flower buds, it produces what they call branch crowns. So you put a strawberry plant in the ground like this one in the fall, and during the winter, when it looks like it's not growing at all, it's putting on another crowns. It's almost like if you have those splitting or walking onions. The walking onions, they'll kind of divide and split, and or any kind of bulb, you'll have a bunch of different bulbs. Well, this has a different crown. So you plant one crown, and it produces multiple crowns in the wintertime. And you have to have temperatures around the 55 degrees and lower mark for flower buds to be initiated in this plant. So as it's, when it's cold in the wintertime and you only see a couple leaves and it's not growing real well out here, and you come by these strawberry patches around middle Georgia and you think, man, those sad plants. It's actually putting growth on, under that plastic and in the ground. So then in the springtime, when these things start growing, start greening up, start looking like they do now, each one of these crowns actually already has all the flower buds it's going to have for the season. So one plant can have around 40 or 50 flower buds. And as this plant grows, it warms up, we get some sunny days like we're finally getting now. Hopefully we're finally past all the frost. This you can see right here, this one shoot or this one flower actually has, or one flower stem actually has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flowers on it. These are all going to open up the flowers. If you can picture this right here, this is going to be where you're going to hold when you eat that strawberry in about 25 days. So this comes out, it takes a few days for this to come out. You've got your primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, if you remember all those words from your high school math classes, which I don't know that everybody remember that, but pretty good about that. Anyway, so you got this flower bud's going to come out first, and your next flower, they're all going to flower, kind of, in subsequent order. So you got 4 flowers coming out of this one. You got leaves coming right here. So that's going to produce 4 fruit, 4 strawberries, hopefully 4 really big, red, juicy strawberries. And like I said, from the time it blooms, that white flower comes out, from the time it blooms, it's going to take 20 days for it to mature when you have good warm weather like this. The reason this year we don't have a lot right now, it's on start of May, we don't have a whole lot of fruit, we don't have our bumper crop that we're used to having, is because we had so many ups and downs through the winter. We had really, really cold late winter. January, February were really, really cold. So these plants, when they're really starting to try and grow, usually they still sat there. They sat there, just kind of balled up real tight with all their buds down here in the ground to keep them protected. And then again, we had to come back in probably 2 or 3 times and cover these plants with plastic or our row covers when it got cold, because we had a bunch of chances of frost as these flower buds were opening up, and that's when they're very susceptible. A green fruit, a green fruit like this one can handle the temperatures around 27, 28 and not be injured, maybe get a little frostbite. An open flower at 31, 32 degrees or with a light frost will be destroyed. So, you know, you can imagine if you have hundreds of white flowers out here and we get a light frost, you know, you lose a big portion of your crop. So we had to cover a lot of times. And then as it gets cold, the progression of this fruit to a ripe fruit is going to slow down, and pollination problems that also happen. So there's been a lot of things with the weather. It's nothing that's gone wrong here. They didn't cover plants up in the wintertime, so they were under some more stress. It's mainly just because the cold weather has held these plants back, slowed them down, and the crop, the bigger crop that we usually have in mid-April will probably come mid-May. So what we're hoping for now is that we don't really get a real hot May. If we get a real hot May, y'all know what happens with strawberries in the heat. We have some issues with quality. So hopefully we'll have a nice mild May like we did last year. Make it past Mother's Day with plenty of good, red, juicy strawberries. The real reason they're having some problems with not having many berries out here is because what I hear is they got a really sorry county agent. And he's just not doing a good job telling them what to do, helping them out with their strawberry patch. They said he'd been worrying way too much with the guy with the peaches. So now we're going to go run down the road. We're going to go check out some garden patches and hopefully find a good yard. Hopefully we can find a yard that looks like mine that's had some really tough times struggling with the cold. All right, here is a great example of another thing that this cold winter, cold early spring, fluctuation in temperature has done to Middle Georgia gardens, okay? You're looking at a big garden here, and you're also looking at a big garden, 1st of May, with nothing in it barely. I called about 10 different people this week, the week before, trying to find a garden spot that had been prepared, had things growing, had things up and going. I mean, going good, so we can kind of talk about some, you know, of our spring crops, and I could not find a soul that had anything planted, which is good. I guess it means that either, I think it means everybody listened to me finally and didn't plant while it was cold. I always tell people, you know, when they say, can we plant, and you know, I tell them go look at soil temperatures, because most of our crops, they require a certain soil temperature to germinate, and you know, a certain soil temperature to grow well and then do well. You know, so we've been checking soil temperatures, and our soil temperatures have been a lot colder this year, and they've been fluctuating. So you could have good soil temperature today, which you will for most of our spring crops, our summer crops. You know, but say like 2 weeks ago, or say like, you know, throughout April, you know, we would go from 60s during the daytime, where our soil temperature would get up in the, you know, 60s, sometimes get even hotter than that, and then nighttime we drop down in the 30s. When that happens, your soil temperature drops rapidly, because it takes your soil temperature a little while to kind of gradually warm up and stay warm. You know, it's harder for it to, it doesn't fluctuate like the air temperature. It's a lot slower to fluctuate. But if you put a seed in the ground, say like your squash, okra, and your soil temperature are 55, what you're going to have is rotten okra seed. They probably won't germinate. If they do, they'll germinate and the plant will die. So this is what you see. You can see we've got some, I think that's chard, rutabaga probably, something like that. We've got that planted. We've got some turnips and kale, some spinach, some small lettuce, winter peas. All these things are a cool season crops. We can plant them in late summer and grow them through the winter, or we can also plant them in spring and grow them into late, you know, late winter, early spring, and grow them on into, you know, late spring. They got some peas and some beans planted, which are just coming up, and that's what we're seeing across the Middle Georgia. All these crops, all these vegetables have been planted late. You know, they had to plant them late. I know people that planted early, whether you planted corn or you planted peas or beans early. You know, we had a lot of problems with emergence, you know, seed rotting in the field. So this is one thing you're seeing a lot. I'm seeing everywhere is that our vegetable gardens are going in late. Transplants being bought from our garden supply stores are still sitting there. You know, a lot of these, you know, these tomatoes and things that people are buying that we normally have bought a bunch of by now, they're still sitting on the shelves of these stores because Well, nobody's planting yet because we've had so much fluctuation, and they're kind of, nobody wants to throw away money by putting seed or plants in the ground and get them frosted. You'll see another thing here that I'd like for everybody to have in a garden is irrigation, and this is nice. They got soaker hoses, or you can use drip irrigation rather than overhead sprinkling irrigation. I'm gonna step across here real quick and point out one little thing. Got a little asparagus patch. And we'll always, I think this asparagus patch was probably planted this year, or last year was its first year. We always tell people, once you plant an asparagus patch, let it grow for a few years. This is an asparagus spear. These leaves, sorry, there's a wasp. These leaves will actually, it's good the first few years to let this plant grow like this. Don't cut it off. Don't take any of the spears like this. This is what you would actually eat. Cut it off here, below the soil line, eat it. But if you let these things grow, let them, leaf on out, that right there is building that root mass that will then next year and the year after, supply you with multiple cuttings of spears. Now I'm gonna step a little farther over here and show you another thing we're seeing, which could be good, could be bad for home gardeners. All right, we got a peach tree here. And what you see on this peach tree is leaves. There's not, well, I say that. There's one peach. It's right there. One decent size. You see it right there? I don't want to hurt it. I want to knock it off. One peach right there. So one thing that cold did, there's another one up there. One thing that cold did is it did a good thinning job for us on our peaches and our fruit trees. If we have any fruit left, we should have some pretty good size on the fruit. But we do have a reduced amount of fruit because of that cold. You'll see that in commercial peach orchards. You'll see that in home orchards. You'll see that in apples, pears, everywhere. That's one thing we'll see. And I said it could be kind of a good thing if you're mildly thinned, if your peaches just barely got thinned, it could be a good thing because it might mean, or your plums, it might mean that you actually have good size on your home peaches and plums, rather than having a bunch of really, really small, runny looking peaches. So we're gonna run now. We're gonna try and find us a good lawn, or I say a good lawn, a lawn that's been bitten by the cold, and I'm gonna kind of talk a little bit about grasses and kind of what's been going on with them. Come here, watch out. All right, like I said when we were over there in the home garden where they had some peach trees, the a little bit of cold on some of our home orchard trees is probably not a bad thing. It helps thin our tree some. Let's just say this is a commercial orchard, but just say if your home orchard, you can see what the cold did here. These are not internally injured, but these probably won't ever make a piece. These small ones right here. So this, if you have a home orchard tree, or a few trees that look like this is a good year to give you a good idea of showing you what thinning your crop will do. Like I said, this peach, even though the embryo or the pit still looks fine, still looks really gelatinous right now and healthy, it's probably not really good. So this is a good year to just go in here and thin these really small, all these small peaches. Some of them might fall off anyway. The tree might say, okay, we don't have enough room for you, so we might knock them off anyway. But then what you might also want to think of is, taking every fruit and leaving that much space between your fruit, about 6 inches. So take a few fruit. We talked about this last month, thinning fruit. But this cold weather thinned for us a little bit. But you might want to think about coming in here and thinning some of these fruit. And I'm going to continue to look in this orchard and see if I can't find one to show you what some internal injury looks like, so you'll know that if you're out and about, if you're at the house and you're looking at your peaches and they're not really moving, or even if you're looking at your pears, apples, plums, and they're not really moving but they're not falling off, if you come in here, and I'll cut this one open. It's a big peach. It's looking fine. It's healthy looking. But before pit hardening, you can take that piece and you can cut it, and hopefully you can see here, this gelatinous area right here in the middle is your pit. If it's good and jelly-like, clear looking, then you got a healthy pit. If there's any kind of opening, any kind of cavity around there, then it's probably been injured from the cold, and it's probably this peach probably not going to size up much past this. And if smaller peaches, if they're brown, black, any kind of discoloration, then that peach, apple, pear, plum is just not going to make it. I noticed on a pear tree at the house that, you know, one side of it, the pears looked okay. The other side, none of the pears looked like they're gonna make. The insides of them looked all dead and decaying. So just another thing that, you know, cold weather, late freezes, and I guess enough chill hours as well. All kind of came together at the wrong time to cause some injury in our peach crop. So we're gonna move on. One last thing, I'm gonna talk a little bit about, you know, some issues we're having with lawns. I had a lot of calls about lawns, so we're gonna talk about some lawns real quick and then wrap this thing up. This isn't actually injured from the cold, but this actually, you can see hopefully that there's actually 2 pits in there. So this is probably gonna be a split pit. And what'll happen is as this thing develops and grows, that pit will split open. You probably cracked into one, cut one open before it's had a split pit. That'll split. Sometimes the end of the peach will actually split, and it opens up a wound where different little bugs and insects can get in there. So that's just interesting to see that at, you know, at this stage. You know, it's something that's going to happen, and it's going to cause some problems probably down the road when it gets ready. You know, when you pick it. All right, I'm gonna say good. I shouldn't say good, but I'm glad that when I came to Bruce's house, his centipede looked just like my centipede. And this is what I'm seeing all over the county, Taylor County, Peach County, Lamar County, wherever you go. If you can pan this way just a little bit, what you'll see out in the main part of the yard, you see a little bit of greening, starting to green up. You know, we're already into May. We got some pretty good warmth we've had the last few weeks. You know, this centipede grass should have been greened up by now. We're seeing a lot of cold injury, a lot of winter kill, and a lot of winter weeds. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about what we're seeing and why we're seeing it, especially in our centipede grass. Centipede grass, I tell anybody if you called me, the reason we like it, the reason I like it, I mean, they called it the poor man's grass a long time ago, and I like that. It doesn't require a lot of mowing, doesn't require a lot of fertilization, doesn't require a lot of water. I mean, it's a real low maintenance grass. What happens in our area, I mean, the biggest problems I see with centipede is when people overdo it. They put too much fertilizer, they put too much water, they don't cut it short enough, things like that. They let it get real thatchy. And I was just talking to Bruce before we turned the camera on, and he told me this right here is a drain. Water kind of pools here. This grass gets real lush and green, grows off real well, too well, you know, every year. So what's happened is this grass is basically not the whole patch. There's some live sprigs here and there, but a lot of this grass has died. If you go out in your centipede yard, it's real spongy. That means it's real thatchy. That means that you've got a layer of grass clippings and basically compost where those roots are. This winter, we had 9 degrees. We had 9, 10, 13, whatever. We were really cold. We had some other, you know, 24s, 22s. We had a lot of below freezing temperatures. You had exposed roots that weren't in the ground, that weren't insulated, that got frozen and killed. You'll see some sprigs of centipede start greening up. There's a little sprig over here. It's starting to green up. As we kind of go on into the year, it'll spread, it'll refill. But this right here is a classic example of winter kill caused by thatch. So that's what we're seeing. Another good thing we got here, because there's dead grass, there's not that competition, there are a lot of winter weeds here. And this is another good example. If you pan back over to the grass that looks a little better, is greening up, that grass has some weeds, not that many. You get down here where the centipede grass is pretty much died out, there are a lot of winter weeds. And this is just a winter annual weed little ID for you, just so you'll have some ideas of what you got growing in your yard. This right here is like a cheat grass. This right here, everybody's favorite. Purple flower everywhere, henbit. You got Carolina geranium, cutleaf geranium. Some people call it cranesbill. So I mean, that's a lot of the common weeds that we see. You got some ryegrass, you got some horseweed coming up. Some more ryegrass or cheat. I don't see anything else. There's some bittercress. So these are a lot of the winter annual weeds we fight. But it just shows, and I'll step forward a couple steps here, and we've got some cudweed. There's a bunch of different kinds of cudweed. Most of these can be controlled with like a 3-way mixture, like a Weed Begone, three-way mixture, or Trimec. In centipede lawns, if you use atrazine as a late summer application, a lot of times you won't see these weeds. But these weeds are mainly here because this grass is weak, it's died off, And you can see, there's just dead grass, a lot of thatch, some green sprigs, which is good because as it warms up, as we start getting some, keep getting rains, these areas they can spread back. One thing I wouldn't recommend is that I would not recommend is with our herbicides right now in centipede, when it's still trying to green up, it's been bit back by 2 or 3 frosts. As it's greening up, I wouldn't spray anything on our centipede grass right now because it can cause a lot of injury as that grass is greening up, and it's been through enough of a struggle this year. So I would definitely recommend no herbicides now. Let it green up, let it start spreading again in these areas, and then then we can start working on it. Maybe put a little fertilizer on it if we think it needs it. I was telling Bruce before he left, one thing you can do. A lot of these winter annual weeds, they're annuals, so they grow, produce a flower, and they're gone. A lot of these are flowering out, heading out. So you could put a lawnmower out here, set it real low, and cut most of it off, and that's going to reduce your weed seed for next year. Or you can do like some people do and just sit down and start pulling them up. Some of them are kind of fun to pull up. If you can get the whole plant at one time, it makes you feel kind of satisfied. But like I said, just give it time, and this grass will fill back in. The yard up here that's a little healthier will also fill back in. But then you just got to continue to try and not let your grass get really thatchy. If it does, you can top dress with some sand, just to give the roots somewhere to be insulated. The thatch just does not insulate it like a soil does. So that's kind of what we're seeing in grasses and all over. And hopefully I've answered some of your questions on what you're seeing in the landscape. And one thing I didn't hit on, but I'll touch on real quick, is a lot of our trees are really late coming out. I've even got some maple trees that are behind. They're later than my pecan trees, and usually pecans are the last thing to come out. Have seen some fig trees that have bit the dust. The 9, 10 to 12 degrees, it did a number on some fig trees. So there's still some things we probably haven't quite figured out, haven't seen the full extent of what the cold weather did. But hopefully most of your stuff in your yard and your garden, made it through and lived to see another year. Well, like I said, it's early spring. We're heading into the growing season, and I'm standing in front of a big old pile of lime. Now, I get the question a lot of times, is it too late to lime? When do I need to lime? Well, my question is, it's never too late to lime. If your soil pH is low for the crop that you're growing, then it's never too late to lime. You need to lime immediately. Now, is it too late to lime for this season? If your pH is marginal, say if you need a pH of 6 and it's 5.8, then I'd say probably no. It's not too late to lime. If your pH is 4.5 and you need a 6.5, yeah, it's too late to lime. You can lime now, but if you plant this year, then what you're gonna have is you're gonna have a struggle with your crop. One thing you gotta remember with lime, there's 2 things to remember with lime. That it's a logarithmic scale. I don't really remember logarithms from school. All I know is that when you go from 4 to 5, that's a 10-fold difference. It's not just 1 point. It's a 10-fold difference. So when you go from 4 to 6, it's a 100-fold difference. That's how that logarithm works. So if you have a 4 and you need to be to 5, you got a 10-fold difference of what you need to correct. Another thing you have to remember about lime is it's not just you throw it in the dirt and it magically raises the pH. It's a reaction. It's a chemical reaction. It reacts with the soil to take away hydrogen ions. So when you put this lime out on top of the dirt, all it effectively does is affect that much of the soil. If you incorporate it through harrying or using a tiller or even just shoveling it in, raking it in, you're mixing that together. And we all remember from chemistry class when we did chemical reactions in class or whatever we had to do, we put 2 things together, usually shook them up, stirred them, something. Makes that reaction happen faster. Same thing with lime in your soil. The more you can mix it in, the quicker it's going to work. But I'm still going to say that if your pH is real bad, you put lime out now and plant in a week. That pH, that lime you've done right now is not helping what you're planting this coming growing season. Well, I'm gonna finish with lime. Hopefully what I've kind of showed y'all today kind of answers a few questions what you're seeing out in your yard, maybe in your garden as you're driving down the road. I put an article in the paper that maybe some of y'all saw. It's called It's Canola. If any of y'all have been driving around Macon County, Peach County, or over towards Crawford County, those fields of yellow flowers that were really bright and beautiful in April, that is canola. You know, they take the seed, crush it, make canola oil. But anyway, like I said, hopefully I've answered a few of your questions for this, you know, late winter, early spring, some issues we've had with the weather. Hopefully we're done with cold weather. It's going to warm up, have a good mild May, have lots of strawberries almost up to June, and hopefully you'll tune in next month to see Backyard Basics, where we're filmed in your backyard.